Hi, welcome to another episode of our YouTube Bible study from Church of the Covenant. I'm Reverend Heather Humphreys. This is my husband Brian Humphreys, and we are looking at summer in the Psalms and expanding on our understanding of the book of Psalms and individual Psalms for our spiritual study that has gone along with our time of worship at Church of the Covenant. So tell us what Psalm we have today.
Well, actually,
Is it Psalm or Psalms?
good question. If we're reading an English Bible or a Hebrew Bible, we would see this is Psalm 9 and 10. However, the Greek versions, the Latin versions, only numbered this Psalm 9. And here's why. This Psalm functions as an acrostic. Now, what that means is...
Oh, big word.
Acrostic, I know. What that means is that in this particular Psalm, every other verse begins with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. This doesn't quite work out number-wise. It seems that the writer actually missed 2 or 3 letters.
But when it was originally written, there weren't exactly verse numbers.
Also true.
So the way it lines up is a little different.
Also true. You may, if you're looking in your English version, notice that is the one that I'm looking at today. It basically takes 2 verses and kind of blocks them off, and then the next 2 verses are blocked off, and then the next 2 verses are blocked off. So that's how that works. Now, what did it mean to write an acrostic? When we think of poems like that, we think of very young children writing poems for their mothers. M is for, this kind of thing, right?
Or with their names and different
Sure.
characteristics to go with each letter of their name. So we think of it, this is a literary term. This is a literary tool when you study different kinds of poetry. That is just a way for then the poet to express meaning in a different way. So what does it mean for this?
Yeah, we don't tend to think of it as a very sophisticated form, but I don't think that that's true of the ancient Hebrews. Some of the poems that they wrote about the greatest tragedies in their national history were acrostics. Lamentations, which talks about the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC, every single chapter is a poem that is constructed on the acrostic form. This was the worst thing that had ever happened to them. This wasn't, so apparently they thought that this was, a more sophisticated form than we do. It's been suggested that perhaps one of the things that an acrostic does in Hebrew poetry is suggest that we are talking about the totality of a topic. Now let's take, for instance, the longest psalm that we have, Psalm 119.
Which you actually find really pretty easily if you just open your Bible to the middle.
That's probably
you
where
tend
you're
to
going to
land pretty close to Psalm 119, which is, again, like you said, the longest psalm we have in the entire book of Psalms.
It is a kind of a discussion of the goodness of God's law. And your Bible probably has headings for each of the sections, and each one of those headings is the name of a Hebrew letter. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, etc. So this is actually an acrostic, and it kind of deals with the totality of the goodness of God's law, something that you'll figure out if you try to read the hundreds of verses of that psalm.
Yes. Not one you want to start off trying to memorize.
No,
not your first try there.
So that's the form of this psalm. This is a psalm that is talking about God's justice for the needy, God's justice in the face of oppression. So let's get into reading Psalm 9 or Psalm 9 and 10.
All right. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. I will tell of all of your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and exult in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. When my enemies turned back, they stumbled and perished before you. For you have maintained my just cause. You have sat on the throne giving righteous judgment. You have rebuked nations. You have destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. The enemies have vanished in everlasting ruins. Their cities you have rooted out. The very memory of them has perished. But the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He judges the world with righteousness. He judges the people with equity. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know your name put their trust in you. For you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Sing praises to the Lord who dwells in Zion. Declare his deeds among the peoples. For he who avenges blood is mindful of them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Be gracious to me, O Lord. See what I suffer from those who hate me. You are the one who lifts me up from the gates of death, so that I may recount all your praises. And in the gates of daughter Zion, rejoice in your deliverance. The nations have sunk in the pit that they have made. In the net that they hid has their own foot been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. The wicked shall depart to Sheol, all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, nor the hope of the poor perish forever. Rise up, O Lord, do not let mortals prevail. Let the nations be judged before you. Put them in fear, O Lord. Let the nations know that they are only human. Why, O Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? In arrogance the wicked persecute the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised. For the wicked boast of their desires of their hearts. Those greedy for gain curse and renounce the Lord. In the pride of their countenance, the wicked says, God will not seek it out. All their thoughts are, there is no God. Their ways prosper at all times. Your judgments are on high, out of their sight. As for their foes, they scoff at them. They think in their heart, we shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, we shall not meet adversity. Their mouths are filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under their tongues are mischief and iniquity. They sit in ambush in the villages. In hiding places they murder the innocent. Their eyes stealthily watch for the helpless. They lurk in secret like a lion in its covert. They lurk that they may seize the poor. They seize the poor and drag them off in their net. They stoop, they crouch, and the helpless fall by their might. They think in their heart, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. Rise up, O Lord. O God, lift up your hand. Do not forget the oppressed. Why do the wicked renounce God and say in their hearts, you will not call us to account? But you do see. Indeed, you note trouble and grief, that you may take it into your hands. The helpless commit themselves to you. You have been the helper of the orphan. Break the arm of the wicked and evildoers. Seek out their wickedness until you find none. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations shall perish from this land. O Lord, you will hear the desire of the meek. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice for the orphan and the oppressed, so that from those from earth may strike terror no more.
So here's a passage, I think, where we're talking about God's justice. And one of the things that we see in both 9 and 10, if you're looking for it, is this sense that of forgetfulness and memory. There's a sense in which those who are doing wicked, those who are the oppressor, say that God is forgetful.
Yep.
That God won't remember the evil that they've done, that God will overlook the evil that they've done, that God's not paying attention to the things that they are doing to the needy. And yet the needy call out constantly, God, remember, God, do not forsake, do not forget, be mindful of what's going on in my life. It reminds me so much of that passage right there at the beginning of Exodus, just after we've been introduced to Moses. It says, that Israel cried out in slavery, and that God remembered the covenant that he had made with their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. and sought to set them free. And so, and I think that we're seeing the same thing here. We're seeing that this call, God, don't be far off. God, rise up. God, vindicate me where people are doing me wrong.
But I also think we see that in the wicked thinking that God is forgetful, I think they're also being forgetful.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are thinking God doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
They are forgetting the importance of God, the way that God has loved them, all that God has done for them. They have turned their back on God. So we see the other side of that as well.
Sure. I like to think, kind of here in these Psalms, that we've got a group that feel like they're helpless, a group that feel like that they're needy, and the reason that they feel that way is there's another group who helps themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They help themselves to everything. They help themselves to resources, to labor, whether it's deceitful. They feel like they can help themselves because they forget that there is a God of the helpless, that there is a God of those who help themselves. There is a God who is a help, and that God is one who will do justice. We also see in both Psalm 9 and Psalm 10 this sense that those people who are wicked are kind of caught by their own schemes. We might say they are hoisted by their own petard. Here in chapter 9...
You might say that. I don't know. I don't even know.
People actually say
What
that.
is that? Comment down below if you remember that phrase or know that phrase or even still use that phrase. I'm just curious.
Okay. Psalm 9, verses 15 and 16. The nations have sunk in the pit that they made. In the net that they hid has their own foot been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. Psalm 10, verse 2. In arrogance the wicked persecute the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes they have devised. There's a sense, maybe this will be more appropriate for folks. Mm-hmm. It is almost like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon.
Okay.
You know, where he sets the little rope trap out to catch the roadrunner, and the roadrunner runs right through it, and he doesn't understand, so he goes and he stands in the middle of it, and all of a sudden he's snapped right up.
It
and
works.
He's caught.
Yes,
it works.
Yes.
You know, there's that sense. You know, is that I guess, you know, you can ask, is it that, you know, they incur guilt on themselves when God's judgment comes? Is it that, you know, the schemes that they make ultimately backfire? There's something to that, you know, when we are walking in an upright way, when we are behaving as we should, when we are acting honorably and with integrity, we do not have to worry about being caught. It is when we are, Psalm 10, verse 8, sitting in ambush in hiding places, stealthily watching for the helpless, lurking in secret like a lion, lurking that they may seize the poor, drag them off in their net. They stoop, they crouch. It's when we do that we have to be concerned.
You know, where we seek to take advantage of one another.
Sure.
And particularly those who are more vulnerable. Which, as, you know, when we watch even anything on the news, really, when we see others try to take advantage of one another on any level, it's highly disturbing. And so I think we see this in our everyday life, where we see people who are seeking to forget who God is, and think that God's not paying attention to them, and are doing whatever they want to satisfy themselves for their own gains, and they take advantage of others along the way, and they don't care.
Yeah, and there are places in that, I think, where, you know, there is imperfect justice. We live in a world with imperfect justice. The question is, do we have hope for God's justice? Do we have hope that, you know, that God will not forget the needy? That God will put things right?
Well, and I think that's where each of us are also called to step up to bring that justice.
Sure.
Our call is the same as God's call. When the God, please remember the orphaned, the helpless. That same cry and same call has always been given to the people of God.
Sure.
Part of being in covenant with God is to say that we will care for one another in community, and to help each other out. And that is our call, to seek out
Sure.
for those who are lost. So in that way, we are all called to bring about God's justice and to help do that, to walk alongside God
Sure.
in doing that work. And so we always have more to do. Will we find hope in God's justice and try to make it happen?
Yeah.
Try to be a part of it.
I'm reminded of what Desmond Tutu said when he said, "Those who, in the face of injustice, are silent, cooperate with injustice."
I think that's a powerful word for all of us, especially in the world we live in today. So we hope you've enjoyed this time of reflecting in the Psalms. And whether you call this one psalm or two psalms, we'll let you decide that. But we've been looking at Psalm 9 and 10 today, and really reflecting on how it is that we are called to live out God's justice. Share this video, make a comment. We hope this has been helpful for you on your spiritual walk. Thank you.